Hi there, thanks so much for joining me this morning. I'm Kim Watson from the Creating Keepsakes Dream Team. Today I'm going to show you how simple it is to create a multimedia page just like this one. This page, Light and Dark, was seen in the September-October issue of Creating Keepsakes magazine. It uses both traditional scrapbooking products and a selection of multimedia products. In a moment I will start step-out instructions so that you can follow along my creative process so that you can make a page just like it. Shall we get started? First of all, grab yourself a nice, good quality, thick white cardstock. Now what we're going to do is apply some texture paste. I like to use the Crafters Workshop plastic stencils. These are great because they come in a 6x6 size, which is really helpful and really versatile when doing scrapbook pages like this one, so that you don't have to cover the entire 12x12 page with your stencil design. You can utilize small areas and add designs in certain parts of the page. So we're going to put it right about there. We're going to grab some texture paste. Let me just quickly point out what I'm talking about. If we have a look at this page here, see over here, this lovely texture over here. This here is what we're working on at the moment, using this stencil over there. It's lovely and tactile and 3D. Let's grab us some texture paste. I like to apply the texture paste using a charge card, which I have over here. Sorry about that. Disappeared there for a minute. Okay, I just use an old charge card. Let's pull the sleeves up. Grab yourself a nice dollop of texture paste. What we do is we just apply it thickly through the stencil, like that. Doesn't matter if it's uneven and gloopy. The uneven texture is actually what gives it more character. Like that. Then we carefully remove the stencil. See, it leaves a lovely design. Now what I want to do is I want to add a few more designs at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mask off this area here to make sure that it doesn't bleed onto the rest of my page. I'm going to reposition this over here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to reposition it loosely about there. I'm not going to cover the whole stencil again this time. I'm going to take a section to add a bit more interest to the page. So spread it nicely like that. And again, you can add it quite liberally. Don't be shy. Just lather it on like that. And when you lift it, you have a lovely 3D design like that. See there? I think what I might do is I might add another one over here just for a bit of extra interest. Got some more texture paste still on my card here. There we go. Okay, now we'll have to let that dry. It takes a little while to dry. The trick with this is not to overheat it with a heat gun, because what happens is it causes the paper to buckle, which we're going to try and avoid. So the best thing to do is let it air dry, although I do tend to get a bit impatient and get it going with a bit of hot air from my heat gun. Over here it's a bit loud. What it'll do is it dries the surface of the texture paste, so that if you bump it, it doesn't mark your hands or get smudged. Let's get it going a little bit, and then we're going to let that dry. And we'll go on to the next stage. Hi, back again. I had a thought. I thought maybe what I might do is I might grab some clear embossing powder. I like to use the Zing brand from American Crafts. It's clear, and we sprinkle it again over our texture paste like this. What it'll do is it won't adhere completely to the texture paste, but in areas it will adhere, so that when you mist or ink, it will resist the mist all the ink or dye, giving you a nice textured, see there? See how it sits on the surface? I don't know if you can see. It sort of looks all matte. Obviously once that's heated up nicely, it will then resist the ink or the mist that we're going to apply in a moment. Okay, let's go on to the next step. You can see here that our first layer of texture paste with the embossing powder is all lovely and dry. See how the embossing powder gives the texture paste a nice glossy effect. Now I'm going to take another one of the stencils from the Crafter's Workshop. I'm going to place it on the edge of the page over here for a bit more texture. Place it at a slight angle over there. Grab my charge card, some texture paste, and let's add some texture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to face it away so that I don't get texture paste onto the actual page, just through the stencil. Again, it doesn't have to be neat, just to give a nice finish. See there? We're going to do another one over here on this side. Shift this over. Let's angle it slightly like that. And again, we take our texture paste with our charge card. Grab some more. If you notice here, that sort of design has happened here. Well, I don't know if you can see it. It's actually okay. It just gives more interest to the page. I'm going to shift it around. Let's do some of the bigger circle designs over here. Just position that like that. And once again, you squish the texture paste through the stencil, leaving a nice uneven textured design like that. And there you have it. Over here. Lovely texture happening over here and over here. Super. Now we're going to have to do the same, let it dry. This time I'm not going to use embossing powder. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. It'll give a more matte finish to give a different texture over the page. We have the gloss in the center here and the matte on the outside. They'll absorb the ink and the mist differently once it's all dry. We'll let that dry, come back in a moment. Okay, now you'll notice that all the texture paste is now dry. I've flattened the page a bit, it does crumple a little bit, but let's flatten that slightly. There we go. Next step, I'm going to take my mist. I'm using Tattered Angels, but you can use any. There's some really great brands out there like Maya Road, or October Afternoon has some great ones, so does Studio Calico. Anyway, so let's take some mist. Now of course, because of the embossing powder that was melted on top of this texture paste, it won't absorb the mist. So what we're going to do is we're going to spray some mist on. There we go. We're going to take a baby wipe. I'm just going to wipe it and blend it slightly. There we go. Otherwise it beads on top, which is what obviously not after. Need to be blended nicely. There we go. Add some more. Blend it again. Okay. Now on top of that, I'm going to rub some ink. I'm using some of these great chalk inks by Prima. What we're going to do is we're going to rub it over the top, just lightly. It darkens the pink colour as well. Rub it as well, lightly. Before it sets, we're going to take our baby wipe and we're going to blend again. These baby wipes are brilliant. add some on the corner here. Down the bottom here, can you see here? Just do it loosely and lightly, and then we'll blend as we go along. Just some of the edges. Okay, let's blend a little more. And you just keep working up the ink until you get a nice finish. Just work up the ink. Okay, there we go. In a moment we're going to add one of the other colours. There we go, that's starting to look great. And we're going to add some orange over here. Just dab lightly. Very light circles. Add some across here. To blend the orange and the magenta ink nicely. There we go. Again, we just take a baby wipe, make sure that it's nicely blended. There, that's looking super. See how it's blending nicely? Okay, I think we might need a little more pink. The magenta, I'd like to add it in the corner here. It's nice to get contrast, layers of colour, dark over light. There we go. Okay, now we'll go on to the next step. Okay, here we go. For our next step, we now have our ink dry. I'm going to flick some light turquoise coloured acrylic paint, which has to dry obviously before we attach all the paper and photographs. So I'll just grab a dollop on the end of my paintbrush and we just tap it and flick. See how it makes nice blobs? We want the nice thick blobs. That's what gives the paint character. There we go, it's looking great. The trick with the acrylic paint is to use a dauber like Jenny Bolin and dilute it slightly with water so that it's runny. The runnier the paint, the easier it flicks. Just tap it like I'm doing. Maybe do a little bit more over here. Okay, looking good. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a lovely design using again some ink and one of the Crafters Workshop stencils. Earlier on we used texture paste, I'm now going to use ink. Just place it carefully down the bottom here, being careful not to touch any of the wet acrylic paint. We don't want that happening. Okay, and then we just carefully swipe over in the desired area. I'm bleeding it off the bottom and making sure that I don't go beyond the top of the stencil. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect again. The inconsistencies are what give it character. Just more on the bottom here. It's looking super. Just peel it back, you can see what's going on. Like that. That's looking good. Okay, that should do it. There we go. Now the trick is to let the acrylic paint dry and then we'll carry on to the next step. Okay, now our acrylic paint is nicely dry. You'll notice that the page gets quite wobbly, especially with all the wet and drying. And I was far too impatient to wait for air drying, so I used my faithful heat gun, which of course shrunk the paper more. So I've learnt a great technique to avoid this, well, to counteract the wobbliness, is that I just stick it onto a nice heavy piece of cardstock at the back and then stitch it. So I stitch it along the edge here, and what it does is it stabilizes the whole page again. It'll never lay completely flat. That's the nature of obviously wetting cardstock. But it's beautifully stable now. Anyway, for our next step, we're going to take our washi tape. This is a great one from American Crafts. I'm going to measure it for a 12 by 12 piece, which I'll do here, like that. So it's approximately that long. And then I'm going to attach it thickly on the one side, like that, and to a lesser amount at the bottom. Press it down, and then I'm going to fold it back over the edge, like that. You see there? You sort of push it down. It sticks really well. So we've got a nice edging on the left-hand side of the page. Okay. Then I'm going to take a lovely stamp. This is a great texture stamp. It's a chevron design from Studio Calico. Grab some ink. I'm going to use black. Now I only want a portion of the stamp. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ink the one corner. Like that. You see there? Ink the one corner. Make sure it's nicely inked. And then we're going to press it down on the edge of the page here. Again, I do not want the entire stamp. I'm only going to use a portion of it. And press it down on the page. There we go. I'll bring that closer. See there on the edge. Lovely finish over there. I'm going to do the same over here. I need my piece of scrap paper to mask the tape so that the black ink doesn't go everywhere. I'm going to put it against the washi tape over here. Re-ink my stamp. Let's do a little bit more this time. A little bit longer. I'm going to turn it in the opposite direction. Make sure my washi tape is masked. And we're going to push it down onto the page. There. Push it down nice and firmly to get good ink coverage. Voila. We have a great chevron design. Again, one can do it anywhere. It's just to create extra texture and interest on the page. Let's move that out of the way. So you can see the whole page. There we go. So you've got some nice black happening here and over here in the right hand corner. Okay, let's go on to the next step. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my completed page, and I explain to you how I added the elements onto our base, which we have here again. I typed my journaling onto a piece of vellum, my trusty typewriter which I found at a thrift shop. I then used black stitching to attach it to the page. My title obviously is a play on words and on colour, as in light and dark. The back elements you can see here are rub-ons. There we go. They rub on really well onto this textured background. From Fancy Pants BU collection. Over here, this is a chipboard accent. Then what I did is I took a paper filter, which I then gathered together with some black lace and just layered it with some pop dots to give it some dimension. Over here is a piece of pattern paper, some sticker strips. For these here, I took a black marker. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. Let's turn it around. I took a black marker and I drew some pennant shapes over here, which I then attached to the page using zigzag stitching. Some buttons sprinkled around, and voila, there's the page. I really hope you've enjoyed following my creative process. I really enjoyed doing this. And we'd love to see any pages that you create using these concepts. Club CK has a fantastic gallery. What I suggest you do is you upload it there, link us on the forum so that we can take a look at your wonderful creative work. Thanks again for joining me. Bye-bye.